We know there are a lot of things that you could be doing with your time, but so many of you choose to share it with us week after week. And we want to say a great big thank you. Every one of you that have taken time to leave us a review, comment, share our podcast on your social media, it truly means more than you will ever know. To give back to all of you, we are doing a fun summer giveaway with some of your favorite Unashamedly You merch. If you shared this podcast to your social media and tag us, then you're automatically entered to win. We are going to be announcing the winner next week. I love sharing this space with all of you amazing listeners. Hello and welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast, a space to enlighten, encourage, and empower you to go out and unashamedly be who God is calling you to be. I am your host, Jamie Herndon. I pray you hear less of me and more of Him as you listen to today's episode. Let's grow together. We have a guest on today. I have followed her on Instagram for a while. And one thing I have been impressed with is she always shows up as a true apostolic. That is not something I can say about every account that I follow that claims to be apostolic, especially whenever they are using their account as what I guess we could so call influencer type account. Not everybody stays true to being truly apostolic, but she has. She even has it in her Instagram handle, Pentecost and Peonies. I love that name. I cannot wait to chat with her today. Lexie Kelley, I am so honored to have you as a guest on the Unashamedly You podcast. If you'll take a moment and introduce yourself to us.
So I'm Lexie Kelley. I'm from Springville, Indiana. I'm newly married to my husband, Austin. We attend Life Tabernacle in Springville, where my father-in-law, Pastor Kelley, pastors. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I recently just had my daughter, Colette, and then we have our son, Oliver. We have 2 under 2, so it's always crazy here. We never know what the day is going to have. I love creating, whether it be decorating at the house or journaling in my Bible or just even making posters for the church. Sometimes we do parades and stuff. I really love just to have a creative outlet somehow. Recently, my husband just started full-time ministry at our church, so things have been crazy lately trying to get a new routine, but we're really excited for what God's going to do.
I love that you have that creative outlet as well for social media, that you've allowed that to be a creative outlet for you because we get to enjoy that as well. And so you recently have a little baby girl and you've been posting about that. She's so precious. I know 202 has to be a lot of work. I did not have my children that close together on purpose because I do not know that I could really handle all of that. So kudos to you as a mom and being able to keep up with life in general. So before we get started here, can you share a little bit more about the account Pentecost and Peonies? If you don't follow it, get on Instagram, make sure that you follow it, how you started it, and really kind of what it has turned into.
Right. So when I moved to Indiana, I knew not a soul. I met my husband actually on Instagram. And then I moved 1,000 miles away from home after we got married. So I had no friends. I didn't fit in with the girls at our church because the girls were younger than me. They were like 7 years younger than me, and they were still in high school. So I didn't really relate there. And then the married girls, 5 or 6 years younger than the youngest one. And I didn't fit in with them because they had all started families. So here we were just kind of like stuck with in between. So I felt very lonely. And with my husband's family being ministry, we would go and have dinner with ministers and they would talk about the Bible. And so I was like, man, I have no friends and I don't know enough about my Bible. It was really hard. So I prayed, and on June 1st of 2021, I got my Bible and a notepad, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to make community. I'm going to cultivate it. I'm going to find other apostolic girls, and I'm also going to learn about my Bible because somebody could have told me a story. And if they said it was in the Bible, I would have to take them for their word because I didn't know. And so I started it and I got the name because, well, I'm Pentecostal and I love Pentecost. And then peonies are just my absolute favorite flower. So I was like, okay, Pentecost and peonies, my 2 favorite things. And then the account started, and God really just blessed it. I mean, it grew much faster than I ever expected. If you would have told me 22,000 people would have followed me, I would have laughed. I'd be like, that's crazy. There's no way more than one person's going to follow. And that one person being my husband.
That's kind of the way that the podcast and Unashamedly You in general started as well. I'm like, if one person listens to this, first of all, I'm going to be very embarrassed and sorry if they're
Right.
listening and have to hear my voice. I'm like, but I mean, what in the world? I don't know how this is going to work out. But when you have that calling, you start feeling that thing that God is calling you to, and that you start showing up in that area that He's asking you to show up in. Somehow He always makes it work, and it's always better than what you could have imagined. I love your account as well because, like I mentioned earlier, is staying true to your values, not allowing the world to influence you. There's a lot of people that start an account, and as their account grows, they feel like that they have to change to
Right.
match the world. And we see that happening over and over and over on Instagram. I know anyone that follows anyone on Instagram. And you know what? It's not just Instagram, and it's not just that outlet as well. There are so many things that we can see people doing. And as it gets bigger, as they become more successful, as the following grows, they tend to change so many times. And you've not done that. You have not allowed the world to influence you or to change your values. And it's something, I'll be honest, I feel so passionate about your type of account because I see so many other women showing up and staying true to their core values. How many Mormon accounts do you follow?
You're right. Absolutely.
Tons. There's
Oh,
so
right.
many Mormon accounts out there. There's so many of these other accounts that are out there, and they're showing up and they're staying true to their core values, and
Hmm.
they're not caring what anybody else says. And I have said over and over again, where are people showing up? They're showing up online. Where are
Right.
young girls showing up? They're showing up online, and they're going to find influence somewhere. Why not allow it to be influenced by true apostolic, staying true to their values, true to biblical principles, and showing that you can influence people doing that as well?
Right. I mean, there's tons of influence everywhere. And I've seen it before, people start an account and they're like, this is for God. And, and then God blesses it and it gains a following and it helps others. And then at some point, it stops being for God and starts being for flesh. And that's something I always try to pray before I post. God, use this to tie back to you, to show someone your glory in any capacity that you possibly can. Because honestly, the account's not for me, it's about God. And I really want to share him with others. I am a first generation. And so I never saw this online. I had gotten into a church down in Silsbee, Texas. I love it. It's an amazing church. It's Brother Looper's. And I would have loved to have had an influence like this. Just someone to say, my life is not perfect, but I live for God, and here's how He will bring you through trials. And I truly believe we overcome by the words of our testimonies. And that's why I post the hard times. I post about things that weren't great, but I know that God's going to fix it or He's going to work in it. And so I truly try to share those because if someone does come first generation, I don't want them to be discouraged as I don't know about my Bible, or I don't know if God can love me or help me through this situation. I think it's very important to share your trials and to share your victories and to stay true to your values because if you stay true to your values, people will see that and say, oh, I don't have to change. I don't have to be like the world. I can be the person God made me to be, and I can be godly and I can be feminine in a world that is not godly and does not like feminine women.
That is so true. One thing I've noticed and I love about your account is you use it to show the goodness of God. You have actually put out several personal testimonies that I personally have read and been encouraged by. And you have used the account to show the goodness of God and to testify to everyone about what God can do.
Right. So I was telling my husband at our 6 week appointment with our daughter last week that it was just amazing. A year ago, I had miscarried, and then here we were with our miracle baby, and we were at a 6 week appointment, and then we were going to outreach and we were helping the community out and showing the community our church. And it's just been beautiful because it's been a complete circle. A year ago, I had I was so crushed. I had no idea how things were going to work out. And then, I mean, he just made it so beautiful. And so a year ago, I had shared my miscarriage and how my dreams were crushed, but I knew that God was faithful and that we would see a way through it. And so I shared that. And then this year, once we had our daughter, I shared about just what a miracle she was and how faithful God has been through that trial. And I know that there's probably someone out there who's dealt with miscarriages or might be going through it now. And I just pray that, maybe a year from now, you see your miracle and you get your miracle. And that's why I share.
So, one thing that I have noticed and I love about your account is that you use your account to share the goodness of God. I know that you have actually put out personal testimonies, and I have been encouraged by them. And I know so many others have as well. But you've stayed really real and raw through the hard times and through the good times and what God has done. You were just sharing a testimony the other day about your son and about your daughter and about things that God had done in your life and using it as an outlet to be a light to a dark world and in a dark place. Sometimes Instagram can be used for the wrong things, we know, but accounts like this that are using it for the right thing.
Right. So my son, he did receive a healing, and I did want to share about that. And along with him, we have our rainbow baby, and I always want to share about those testimonies. Something so small as him not being able to walk, and then God healing it, and there being no issues. Someone out there might need that. There might be somebody who thinks, oh, I can't pray about this. God doesn't care about this. God cares about all of the tiny things, and we do overcome by the words of our testimonies. And God tells us to go out into the world and share with the world. And if we're not sharing our intimate, tiny little miracles that we get and the testimonies we have, then we're not letting God use us to our full potential. And, He tells us to be a light to the world. So go be that light in a world that is saying, you have to do this, you have to do that, and they don't care about God. I think people forget that, you can share not always the pretty things with God. And I think a lot of people online think that Christians have perfect lives. Like, oh, look, I got a new house and I got a new car and I prayed for this new job and God gave me this new job. But sometimes it's not always that. Sometimes, you need to share the testimonies before you've seen them fully answered. So, like with our rainbow baby, before we had a rainbow baby, we had a very sad miscarriage. And it's good to share those things because you're doing it in the moment. You're showing people how to get through a trial. I'm praying right now through this. This is what I'm dealing with. You might have gone through this or you may go through this, but remember always to go back and pray and worship God and testify about it, because those are the things that will help you overcome very hard moments in time.
One thing that you mentioned was being able to share just, the everyday miracles that God does and being able to share the hard times, like you said. A lot of times people think, oh, well, now I'm a Christian. Now I'm living for God. Now I'm walking with God. Why is this happening to me? Why is God mad at me? Am I the only one that's going through this? And if someone else is sharing and they're telling about something that they're walking through and that it's hard and how they're getting through it, let's be honest. On social media, a lot of times people are talking about, getting through parenting or getting through different stages of life. They're having to drink glasses of wine. They're having to do this and that. They're having to run off with their friends and they're going on this vacation. They're doing this and that. And then whenever you have another account and someone is seeking and searching for God and they're seeking and searching for something that He would have us to do, and you have your account and you're showing up and you're saying, this has happened to me. I am a Christian. I am walking with God. But you know what? It's hard right now, but I'm trusting Him. I am going to Him in prayer. I am walking with Him. I am in my Bible. I'm reading His Word. And you're using that as an opportunity. In case you're listening to this and you're wondering if you did not know, we live in a fake society.
Right.
And social media is a place to show up extremely fake. You don't even have to mean to show up fake.
Right.
And it cannot be the full light and the full truth. If I show one part of my house that's clean, I can guarantee you do not have to wonder. There is another part of my house that is an absolute disaster that's not on social media. I'm not going to share it. I'm not going to show that on social media. I've said before, some people they are like, I want to be real and raw. Yes and no. There are certain things that we do in life and they're a real part of daily life. And you're like, don't show that on social media. So even though I'm not trying to show this picture of my children in this one section of my clean house and make it look like that my life looks perfect, there's someone else on the other side of the screen that may be sitting in a house that they're not comfortable with, or that, they may be going through a moment and they see this and like everything looks perfect, everything is perfect. And the other person didn't even mean for it to come across like that, right? And then as Christians, when we're always showing just that side of life where the blessings are, I've got my rainbow baby, and you're showing them at the hospital and it's an amazing time. There's also another side of that. There's a faithful God that was with a mom while she was going through that time of infertility or that time of a miscarriage. And whenever you're showing up online, do I say you have to show up online if you're going through anything like that? No, absolutely you do not. I feel like you should share whatever you're comfortable with. But I can say that anytime anyone has been through something hard, when you see someone else testifying of the goodness of God while they're going through it as well, it's helpful to know that they understand and that they've been there and you don't feel so alone.
Right. So it makes me think of Job. Job, there are Bible stories that we share and they're super happy and they're like, oh, look at this. But sometimes we do live in those Job moments that are just soul crushing. They're so hard and you just don't think it can get worse. And then it gets worse. And it's just like, wow. And then you have like in your ear the devil, like, oh, God doesn't care, but he does. And that's why I think it's so important to share truth and to share some of those hard moments because someone else might be going through a Job moment and they might not see a way out and they might have the devil in their ear saying, like, just curse God. He doesn't care, but he does. And it's just, that's why I love sharing that. I love letting others know that you're not alone. Other people, other Christians, they have hardships. And I honestly think that when you really get on fire for God, I think the devil tries to hit you harder and give you harder moments to just knock you down and not be as on fire for God. And that's why I think it's so important that you just remember you have to stay faithful, you have to pray, and you will overcome it. If you testify about it, you will overcome it because God keeps his promises and he says you overcome by the words of your testimony. And I think social media has just become such a highlight reel of look at this. This is amazing. My life is going great. But nobody else is really sharing the hardships. They're sharing their best moments, which honestly, who wants to share about all of the hard times? It's not fun. It's not fun waiting for a year. It's not fun pulling from savings to pay for your groceries. I mean, we've had the last 8 months, we had to pull from savings to afford basic necessities like milk and bread and eggs. It's hard. Nobody wants to share about, um, I'm struggling and I'm a Christian and I pray and I go to church and I'm still not making enough money to eat. Like, I didn't even share that. We struggled for many months and it was really hard and we didn't know how. And I even put in my Bible, like, I even wrote in it, God, when are you going to help us? When are you going to answer? And I can say that it took almost a full year, but now my husband, like, and he even had job interviews and they just didn't work out. And the interviewer even said, like, this job is yours. He had one job he was supposed to get. He interviewed in November and we thought, like, wow, our 3 months of praying for a job is over. Like, we're going to be able to afford dinner. And for whatever reason, it never happened. The government job didn't work out. They said, we're on hold for your contract. And we never knew why. And then God opened a door for Austin to be in ministry and to work for the church. And we're like, oh, wow, this is why that didn't work out. We prayed for God's will and we wanted it. And it took a long time. And that was something I hadn't shared yet because he actually started last week. So I was going to wait to post about it. But that was a hard time. But I will say, God never made us without a meal. We always had a roof over our head and we always had food, whether we had much money or not. We always were able to get to church with gas. He was really good to us, even though it was hard.
And like we said, sharing those moments, it may not be something that you are sharing at the time that you're going through it. But I do think that it's so important to realize that it's not always, every Bible story is not always, even the ones that come out and we're like, oh, praise God, a preacher preached at our church not too long ago. And one thing he said is, we always want to preach about Job doubled. Everything that come back doubled, praise God, we can all run the aisles. But what about the times that Job stayed faithful whenever he didn't know where in the world God was?
Right.
when he everything was getting pulled from him and he was left with zero and he was getting double hit when he was having double the trials and those were
Right.
coming. We don't want to preach about that. We don't want to run the halls about that. We don't want to, we don't want to think about that because it's the hard times. It's not fun. It's more fun to know whenever God's going to come through, he's going to give. But it's whenever God's being faithful. And it's whenever you're staying faithful to God, even though you don't know right where He is. God, you're carrying me through because I wouldn't be walking through this without you carrying me through it. And if you're not sharing it at the time that you're going through it, and this is not a podcast all about just sharing everything that goes on, and I don't want it to turn into that as well, but just saying if you if you feel a nudge on your heart to share something, and you feel that nudge to testify about the goodness of God, whether it's through social media or whether it's through to a person, whether it's through a podcast, and you start sharing and telling about the goodness of God, I can tell you that those listening are going to be encouraged. Just like we go to those Bible stories and we read those for encouragement, you could encourage someone with your life. We're still supposed to be encouragers and encourage other people with our lives. And it just so happens that being able to use social media as that outlet, if that's something that you feel like is a calling that God has placed on your heart and your life to do, sometimes we don't want to do it because there's so many things. Let's talk about that for a second about sharing on social media and having the enemy attack you and talk to you in your ear saying, well, maybe you shouldn't share that much, or maybe you shouldn't talk about that. Maybe you shouldn't be so real and so open about that. Or what are people going to think about you? What are people going to think about your husband, your family, whenever you share these things? That's a real thing that's going on in people's minds that are sharing on social media.
Right. So I think wholeheartedly ministry is more than just being behind a pulpit. You can have a ministry in many things. And for a long time, I wish my ministry would have been in singing. I would have done anything to have been a good singer, but it's just not in the cards for me. Um,
Exact same here.
and I'm not very musically inclined with an instrument either. And so you see these men and they preach and they have these wives that can sing and they can play piano or organ like nobody's business. And then you're like, oh, well, I don't do that. But there's more ministry than just being up on the platform too. You can be a prayer warrior or even outreach. Outreach is a ministry in itself. And my husband said something one day. We talked about how it's hard to go door knocking these days because a lot of times people will shut the door in your face. But then if you post online, you're not at their door, you're in their home. You've already made it. They're sitting on their couch, you're sitting on their couch with them. They can see what you have to offer. So you're influencing them and they go online. When you go online, I don't care who you are, you're going to be influenced by something, whether it's someone's space they design in their home, even down to music. I've seen a lot of people use these reels and they have music that is not very godly. And I'll find myself in the house and I'll be thinking of that song. And I'm like, that's not a good influence. And so that's why we need to show up online and we need to have more apostolic influencers, quote unquote influencers, whatever you want to be. I think anybody can be an influence to a person. And I think if outreach is your calling, show up for it. Let it be your calling. Let God use you to that capacity, however it is. And don't worry about being embarrassed. If your friend's telling you, oh, that's embarrassing to post, then maybe you should really reconsider that. And, maybe you should probably pray about it. It's probably not embarrassing to post because someone else is probably struggling with the same thing. I think the devil will try to get in your head and take you away from your calling and say, well, maybe your calling's in this other spot instead. And that spot probably isn't your calling. I'm not called to sing, and I did not think I was called to outreach. I always thought I was called to sing, even though I would pray. I'd say, God, help me to just be a good singer. If you make me a singer, I'll get up there and I'll sing for you on Sunday mornings in front of everybody. That wasn't for me. That was for the flesh. I just wanted to be a good singer. Back then, I probably didn't realize it, but that was for me. And I think that I was so stuck on, I want to be a singer and I want to be used on the platform. I would let the devil just block my calling by letting him get in my head saying, no, you need to be this. And a calling's not what I want to be. A calling is what God is using me for. If you pray to be a willing vessel, be the willing vessel. If He wants you to go have a calling for outreach, go have a calling, go door knocking, post online, be where God places you, be used of it to its full glory because you're not doing your calling for yourself, you're doing it for God. So, anytime you go outreach, anytime I post online or go door knocking, it's not for Lexie Kelley, it is for God's kingdom. I want to see the kingdom grow. We need to see the kingdom grow. And if sharing online or sometimes oversharing online helps people see his glory and brings them to the kingdom, then it's worth it and it's not embarrassing. To tell 22,000 people, hey, we couldn't afford dinner. That is embarrassing to my pride. That it does strike your pride down and it doesn't make you want to talk about it because that's embarrassing. Who can't pay for a meal? But I'm not the only person who couldn't afford a dinner. And if you talk about that, and you tell people, like, I prayed, and God never let me go hungry, they're going to say, okay, maybe I need to get in a church. Maybe I need to pray. If I get a relationship with God, this is going to take me out of this trial. And that's what it's about. It's about helping at least one person get closer to God.
I've never heard it put that way, but I love how you said that your husband was saying whenever you post online and whenever you post things, you're not just knocking at their door. You're already inside their home. You are being an influence right there on their couch. You've made it to their mind. They're looking at already what you have to say. You're not saying, "Hey, can I talk to you about God? Can I talk to you about the goodness of God? Could I invite you to my church?" No, you're already doing it. They have opened it up. They have allowed themselves to be invited by looking at it. You don't have to ask them if you can invite them. So, if you're not posting about your church and about things online, no matter what, if you are on social media at all, that has definitely made me realize how important, because sometimes I'll think you want to share a sermon or you want to share a reel that has been at your church or you want to share and invite people. And I do those things, but hearing it said that way makes it even more real in my own mind. Like, yes, we do have family members that aren't coming to church. And when they come across this, I'm inviting them to church. I am reminding them of what's going on in the house of God and to others, letting them be aware that, hey, this is going on at God's house and you need to be there. So using it for that because, social media can be talked about in a bad light and there are tons of influence going on over there, like you said, whether it be a song that you're listening to, whether it be how you're styling your house, whether it be how you're raising your kids, whether it be how you're fixing your hair. Let's be honest, there's like so many things going on over on social media that we're looking at, that we're looking to. It's fun. I like looking up ideas of ways to style my hair and not that I ever do any of them, but if I wanted to one day, I'm like, this would be really fun to do if I could figure this out and looking at different things and allowing it to be um it influences your life and it's fun. It's not all bad things. Let's be honest. It can get a bad rep and there are bad things on there. It can definitely lead you to a whole different world and to a whole different option, but it also can be a really good thing. And it depends on what you are using your account for. You have the opportunity, you have it in your hands, and more than likely, if you're listening to this, very few people do not have some sort of social media account. And if you do have some sort of social media account, even if you want to say that you're not influenced by others or by the world or by this or by that, yes, you are if you're looking at it whatsoever. If you have a Pinterest account, if you have any type of account where people are posting things to it and you're looking at it, you're being influenced by it.
Right.
But it can be used in a good way whenever it is used correctly.
Even if you don't have an account with what you think is a big following, you still probably have family or friends that you went to school with or coworkers that are not in the kingdom of God. And if you post, hey, look what we have going on this weekend at our church. We'd love to have you for a family and friends night at church, or we'd love to see you at our church recreational grounds to play a game of softball. You're still being an outlet to them. You're still being used to them. So you don't have to have a bunch of followers. You can just have family members, even on Facebook, just to say, hey, you guys. And I know I experienced it personally recently. My son wasn't able to walk, and we called for prayer. We had no idea what was wrong. We took him in for x rays, and we were really worried. And then all of a sudden, he just started walking after we prayed about it. And doctors called and said, there's no problem. So I shared that with not only Instagram, but I shared it on my personal Facebook where I have many friends and family who do not believe and don't attend a church. And they noticed it. They saw it. They said, "This is amazing. I'm so happy for you. I feel blessed to have read this." And, if that drives someone to go to church, that's a good thing. And it's just those little seeds we're planting. And like you said, even if you have a Pinterest, you're being influenced by something. And so I think we see a lot of negative things online. So why not share a good thing and why not try to grow the kingdom? Because, it is a tool, whether or not people believe it or not, it's connecting people all across the world. I met my husband through a global pandemic because of Instagram. So God can use it for his kingdom and you can reach more people than you could ever even imagine. And if it's for the kingdom and you're really doing it for God, it will show others his glory. And you don't want to do it for the flesh. So it makes it kind of hard because you want to stick to your values, but you have to always keep God first and foremost in it. And just remember, like, this is not about the flesh. This is about God. I'm doing this for the kingdom. And you'll see it. I mean, we post, my husband, he does our church social media, and he's been posting the old songs, like Nothing But the Blood, and Sister Symphony Hornsby just sang The Blood. And I mean, it reached like 20,000 people, just a simple song. So it's not even just sharing about, like, look what God did in my life. It can be sharing a song. Look how many people that reached. And I know that not every single one of those people that song met attends a church, but they saw it and it got them interested. And then they see more videos and more church singing, and it leads people to God. And that's just the beauty of it all is you can use it to lead people to God.
You mentioned even though you don't have a large following, I want you to talk to someone because let's be honest, I've done it both ways. Which starting a new account from ground zero, you're at zero following and you're starting something new and you're starting to post things like this. If you don't follow her account, go follow it and see kind of what she posts and the style that she posts. But she posts about just core values, things that are important to her family, being feminine in a world that says, to be a successful career woman. She's talking about being a stay at home mom and sticking to those values and to those things. But you all have to start from somewhere. We all start from ground zero. No one's handed an account that's got all these followers. And maybe encourage someone that is feeling that call. They want to start an account like this, or maybe they've started one, but it's hard to stick with it. It's hard to continue to post. It's hard to keep that going. Talk to the person that is feeling a calling to do an account like yours. We both mentioned, I feel very strongly about core value accounts that are apostolic need to be sharing more on social media, in my opinion. A lot of us are looking and we're scrolling all day long, but we're not getting out there and we're not posting about what is important to us, and about the things that are important and being a light in the dark world. And we have an opportunity to do that. And some people may be like you, where you said, I've got to grow a community. I've got to have friendships. I need this. I need this outlet. I need this creative outlet to have. But we all start at ground zero and starting in an account brand new. I know it can be very overwhelming and it does not sound fun at all, but continuing to post and continuing to show up, even when you don't feel like it, continuing to share, even whenever you may be a little bit embarrassed or you're nervous whenever you're getting started, speak to that person and give them some encouragement or some things that you did when you got your account started.
If you're wanting to start an account and you think that maybe outreach is your calling, because I fully believe social media is just another section of outreach. If you think that's your calling, do it. Go for it. And if you're doing it for God, people will see it. I don't think it's about numbers. It's easy to say when you have an account with that many, but even if you have 5 people, keep doing it for God. The devil's going to try to discourage you and say, well, this is how many people are looking. People don't care. People care. There's somebody out there that needs what you have to offer. They need that little bit of God knowledge you have because they're getting fed all these other things. Start your account because there's people starting dance accounts and they start from nothing and then they get thousands. Do it for God and it's going to gain and it will work out. It might take time. It's taken time and that's okay. Good things take time. Wait on the Lord. Wait and just be strong and faithful to Him and He will bless it. He will bless your ministry because outreach is considered a ministry. uh, don't let somebody discourage you. If you see somebody else's account and you're like, wow, their account looks great, I'll never do that. Do it. You can do it. There's room for everybody. How many Pentecostal clothing accounts are there? There's tons of modest influencers. There's tons of modest shops you can buy from. Why can't there be tons of apostolic accounts sharing about God? You can do it. There is not a limit on it. There's not a limit that says there can only be this many apostolic influencers. There should be more. We need more. If you feel the slightest calling to do it, do it. Share about God. Everybody needs to share about God. We need more apostolics because the world's just growing and it's getting darker and darker. And if you can let your little light shine, it's going to help somebody and we need it.
The biggest thing that I think of here is when you have truth and you are combining it with all the other values and things like I had mentioned earlier. I mean, there's tons of different accounts, but Mormons come to mind because a lot of them are on social media.
Right.
Tons of them are. Tons of them are influencing in some sort of way, no matter what it is, whether they're, it's a in some form or fashion, they have certain accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not embarrassed about it. They're not embarrassed to share. They're not embarrassed to share what they're a part of. They're not embarrassed to share what they're doing. And they're on social media and we're following them because we like their lifestyle, because a lot of the things that they have values. They're not just, living this meaningless life. They're doing it for a reason and for a purpose. Like I was saying, there are so many accounts and they're showing up online and they're for all these other reasons. Like these girls, they're wearing these hijabs and they're showing different ways to wrap them and showing different ways to wear them. And there's all these other things. And I'm seeing these accounts nonstop. And in my head, I'm thinking, how much more should we be showing up? I'm even talking to myself. How much more should I be showing up in modest clothing and apostolic clothing with apostolic hair and allowing people to see the truth? Because we have the truth. If you're an apostolic, if you have obeyed Acts 2:38, you have the truth. And showing up in a world that's dark and in a world that needs us, they're showing up. They're showing up online for what they believe and for what they believe is right. And so should we.
Right. I mean, they have it's hundreds of degrees outside in the summer, and they have full. I know with the ones they wear on their the wraps they wear on their head or hijabs, and some of them even go further than that and do full body and only show their eyes, and that draws attention to them. You see them, and you're like, I know what they live for. I know what they believe in. So why can't we get out there with our long hair? Or not even just long hair, uncut hair. Because the length of your hair isn't the thing. It's your uncut hair. It's being obedient. Let's go out there. Let's be obedient. Let's have our long hair. Let's wear our modest clothing. Let's let God use us. Let people see God in us because you look different. You look different and it draws people in and they care. They might not think they care, but they do. There's something about them that's like, that's interesting. I'm gonna remember that. When you're out in town, be a light of God. You don't have to just be on socials to be a light for God. Wear your modest clothing. Men, it's kind of hard to tell the difference in them. Wear a long sleeve shirt. Let people see God in you. Let people see a difference in you and let God draw them in. Because if these people who are in different religions can do it, why can't we? Why do we have to be embarrassed? We don't have to be ashamed. We're Holy Ghost filled. We speak in tongues. We've been baptized. He died on Calvary for us. We have truth. So share it. Don't be embarrassed by it because that's what the devil wants. He wants all these other people to share their religions because it's not truth. Share truth. Be apostolic. Tell people about God. Live for God. I saw a reel a couple of weeks ago and it was a girl and she wore her hijab and somebody asked her if it's hot and she said, yes, it's hot. You're hot in a tank top. I'm hot in this. Of course I'm hot. She said it's 100 degrees out, but it doesn't matter. I do it because I love my God. So let's do things because we love our God, not, it doesn't matter if it's hot. It doesn't matter if people think we look weird. It's not weird to God. God loves it. It makes God happy. Make God happy.
I think so many times we can get wrapped up in those things of, like I said, it matters what you're influenced by. It matters who you're following. It matters what you're listening to. It matters what you're looking at. And whenever you are influenced and you have fake filters, or you're influenced to make your skin better to show up online, or, you're influenced to have a certain look and to be a certain way, that's not what God's asking you to do. He's not asking you to not be apostolic and show up. He's not asking you to wear a big filter over your face and to not show up as a real apostolic woman. But whenever he is asking you to show, if they're showing up and they're not ashamed and they don't care, we need to show up too. It's our responsibility to show up and to show people that there is a difference in the way that we live. There is a difference in the life that we have, but it's a better life. And whenever we're giving those testimonies and whenever we're telling the goodness of God and we're sharing those scriptures online, it's a bigger light than what I think we even realize.
Oh, for sure it is. I mean, don't put God in a box. Let him be bigger than that. There's no cap on how many people you can reach. As many as the world has. As many people have social media, as many people afar off as our God shall call. Um, there's not a limit on who you can reach and how God can use you. So just let him. I think a lot of people forget that. They think like, oh, I'm only going to reach maybe 5 or 6 people. But you're so much more than that. And, even if it is, who cares? It doesn't matter. You're doing it for God. So live for God. Let him be using you.
I feel like whenever you pray and allow God to lead you and to guide you in something like this, He will. He'll lead you and he'll guide you. He's given you a talent. He's given you something, an ability to be able to do something, to be able to share something, whether it is no matter what you're good at. We're all good at different things. It may be playing and singing. I follow some people and they play and they sing and it's beautiful and it's amazing. And I wish that that was me, but you're not going to be able to follow me for that because I mean, I'm sure my reels would get shared if I was playing and singing, but it would not be for the glory of God. It would be for a mess. But when you have truth and you're showing up and you're showing up as an apostolic Pentecostal lady, whether you are young or you're in the raising children stage, or whether you are an older lady that has grown kids and you have a meaning, I see posts shared all the time by apostolics, by Pentecostals, by Pentecostal women. They're sharing these quotes or they're sharing these posts. And in my mind, I'm thinking that's good and great, but this person behind this account does not have truth. And
Right.
we are reading these quotes and we're going after their lifestyle and what they have going like it's truth and like it's amazing. And in my mind, I'm thinking, but you have the opportunity to truly post a real quote that could be birthed through prayer that God has given you, or you have a lifestyle that God has placed on your heart, or He's blessed you to be a part of. If you are anything that you are doing, let it be done to the glory of God. And whenever you are showing that, and you, again, going to throw this disclaimer out there, I do not believe that this is for every single person to go out there and share every single thing. But when God puts something on your heart, or when He's done something for you, or if He's given you some sort of ministry, and he's given you something that he wants you to do or that he's put on your heart to do, if you do it unto him and allow him to bless it and allow him to take it, he's going to do that. But don't get discouraged in starting small and in the beginning stages of that, because he can bless it. But I often say, if you could help one person by this post, if you could help one person by sharing this testimony, if you could help one person realize that they're not alone, or one person to be encouraged, would you do it?
Right. I mean, that's the point. That's the whole reason we're here is to one person,
If the answer is yes, what are you waiting on?
right? If you're going to do something, do it for God. Do it wholeheartedly. If you want to start an account, start it. If you have a calling, go for it. Go hard for it. Pray for it and find your burden. Get a burden. If you don't have a burden for the church, get a burden and find your calling and just see where God leads it. If we can, like you said, follow these women who don't have truth, what's stopping other apostolic women if you do decide to start an account? What's stopping another apostolic from following you? You have truth, you have the Holy Ghost, you believe what we believe. If you start an account, message me. I'll follow you. I'll share your account. I want everybody to know about you. There's room for us. You can be younger than me, you can be a high schooler. I've seen a high schooler that is apostolic and Pentecostal, and she has a following and she stayed true to her core values. I've seen other mothers my age. I've seen women who are even older than me. I would love to have their wisdom. They've had more life than me. I would love to hear their testimonies and see what God's done for them. Don't let age stop you. Your age, I mean, it truly is just a number in this capacity. Your mind, honestly, the older you are, I would love to hear it because you've had more chances. You've had God's done more things in your life. You know how to get through things. And us younger girls need to hear it. And then the girls younger than me need to hear things I've lived through. But also, this world's evolving. So I need to hear what the younger girls have been through. The younger generation is facing things I've never had to face just because of smartphones. So I think that for all ages, it's really honestly appropriate, and we need to hear voices from all ages.
Speaking of older women, there are tons of grandmothers that are on social media, and I absolutely love following their accounts. But if I'm being completely honest with you, there's not a ton of apostolics that are out there and that are sharing this and that are putting it out there and they're putting it on social media. And I want to hear from you. If you're listening to this and you're like, man, you know, I I have had probably 4 women on this podcast lately that have looked at me with tears in their eyes and said, I have a burden for the generation of moms that are raising children right now. And if you want to know where our generation and where the moms my age are, we're on social media.
Right.
I mean, most of the time they are at some point in their day to wind down or to do something throughout their day. A lot of times it's just an outlet. It's an outlet to free your mind. It's an outlet where I don't have to think about anything and you can mindlessly scroll. And it's not mindlessly scrolling bad things. I'm getting good ideas or I'm following something or I'm seeing family members or I'm seeing people going out and doing something and I love it, seeing friends and family that are going on vacation and getting to see their photos. And I absolutely love that. I love that world. I love connecting. It's a connector. We feel connected. But if you are feeling this calling and you're feeling like God is asking something of you and you're feeling this burden for the next generation, or if you're young and God's given you a burden for your generation, you're going through things that girls are going through, or if you're going through, like you had talked about before, the miscarriage, if you're going through infertility and you're not really sure how this problem or how this trial could help someone else. But whenever you post about it and then you get messages and people are saying, you have no idea what you've done for me. You have no idea how this helped me. You have no idea where I was whenever you posted this and God allowed me to see it and it encouraged someone. If they would have never posted it, if they would have never done that, they would have never been able to allow God to encourage someone through them. That's all God's asking is for us to be vessels used of Him.
Right. And, if I have one testimony through social media, it is social media is worth it if it reaches that one person. And recently I had someone reach out to me. Well, actually, I reached out to her. She married my husband's cousin, and I congratulated her on her marriage. And she told me, well before she even started dating her spouse, she said, I followed your account. I had no idea you were related, and she was not Christian. She actually was a completely different religion at the time. She said, I found your account. I learned how to read a Bible. I was encouraged by this, and this helped me start my journey into Christianity. And now here she is. She's an apostolic. Her husband and her, they go evangelize in Canada. And it's beautiful. It gives me chills thinking about it because it's like, who knew 3 years ago when she found my account that we would be cousins and that she would be a Christian? And so that's one person it brought to God. And that's the point. I might not reach the same person you do. So you go out, reach a person. It's beautiful. We had absolutely no connections whatsoever. She had been friends with the guy, but that was it. And she just saw me on her explore page. Somebody could see you through a reel or see you through an explore page, and you could help bring them to God. And that is such a good feeling knowing, like, wow, I did my calling. I did what God wanted me to do. Here's part of the fruit from it. We should be happy. We want to see the kingdom grow. Whatever your ministry is, we want to see it grow and we should be excited. We shouldn't just be happy with one, though. We should, after we get the one person, okay, let's get 2 people, let's get 3, let's just see the church grow. How can we expand our buildings? How can we help other churches expand?
I love that you were talking about using your account for social media. And that is so incredible that she found your account. That story gives me chills. That's amazing that God has been able to do that. And that is what we're talking about right now. It's the power of social media. It is grown, it is powerful, it is able to do things. But what if, whenever you have this powerful tool and you couple it with prayer, fasting, and your calling,
Um,
allowing God to use it as a testimony and allowing your testimony to be used of God through this powerful tool. And He's going to get the glory. When you're praying and fasting, do I think that everybody should just start an account and start doing all these things on social? Absolutely not. But if you're listening to this and God's been asking you to be more loud about something or to share something, and you're like, oh, that's just me, or no one cares, no one wants to see it, no one wants to know. Absolutely not. If your flesh is telling you that no one wants to see it, no one wants to know, no one wants to follow you, but whenever you're praying or whenever something happens, God's saying and putting in a little nudge in your spirit, a little nudge in your heart saying, share that, show that, or I've given you that burden, I've given you that talent. I'm wanting you to encourage or to help someone else and you're feeling that. I pray that this episode has encouraged you to go after it and to do something for God. Everything that you've said today has been amazing. It's been encouraging. I've loved the things that you have shared with us. What is one last thing that you would want to leave with the Unashamedly You community today?
Um, a man at my church told me this. He said, you usually have three voices in your head, and it could be for something for the kingdom of God. And so, first voice, that's God telling you, like, go do this, go do it. And you question it with that second voice, and you're like, I don't know. And that third voice tells you, no, don't do that. Don't listen to that third voice. Don't listen to the second voice. Do what God is asking you to do. Whatever burden He's given you, take it and run with it. Get on fire for God and just let God use you. Be used of Him, be a willing vessel, and go help win souls.
Be unashamedly you, which is what this podcast is all about, is to hopefully encourage you to go after your giftings and what God is asking of you. And the reason why we have so many people on this podcast to share is because I want you to know if you are feeling like showing up online, if you're feeling like showing up on social media, it's not dumb. It's not something that is no big deal. It's not something that isn't really that you're feeling that calling for no reason. There's a reason why that God is calling us to do anything. And if anything, hopefully this podcast has encouraged you to share about the goodness of God, share about what's going on at your church, share those reels or posts or those sermons that are coming across social media because you never know who's going to be helped, who's going to be touched, or whose explore page God is going to have you show up on that He is wanting to speak to.
Right. Don't bury your talent. Use it, multiply it, and grow it.
And allow God to bless it.
Right. That's the main part. Allow God to bless it and use it.
I pray that your post and your seeds fall on good ground today. Thank you so much, Lexie, for being on the Unashamedly You podcast. We loved having you.
Thank you for letting me be on this and just letting me share God's glory. It's been so fun.
If this podcast has blessed or helped you in any way, we would be delighted if you would go and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify, tag us on Instagram, and tell your family and friends. We love when someone lets us know they are listening because a friend told them about our podcast. Go be unashamedly you.